very graciously invited the Elliott Group to participate. He said, make it New York City centric. So we're going to really drill down, we hope today, on some things that are relevant to all of you, and then a little bit more globally. But I do want to tell you a couple things. The thing about New York, right, wrong, or otherwise, no matter how much we all get energized living here, New York's a really stressful place to work. And when you travel the country, and I know Charlotte was mentioned in Denver, which I happen to be a University of Colorado Boulder grad, so I love Colorado. And by the way, in those days, with all due respect to all healthy food today, when I went to college, there was still bean sprouts. So it's really not a new phenomenon that people want to eat healthy. It's just because of social media, it's become a lot bigger. But New York is a very, very stressful place to do business. And I think we can all agree, you know, what can we do to mitigate and help each other be the best city in the world that we can? And certainly this is the center of the universe when it comes to food. You should know that there are 74 companies represented here today. And that's really awesome. If you think about it, on a Wednesday, the middle of the week, everybody's busy. No one has time. 74 different companies chose to come together, we at Elliott break bread, to break bread and really share ideas. And I think that really speaks to the essence of the industry, and I think it really speaks, as we'll talk about right now, the essence of the opportunity, because you can have all the great real estate in the world, you can have every metric, you can have technology, you can have everything. I happen, by the way, from before they ever had one platform, I've been on the board of a company called Ziosk that really is much more prone for casual dining chains, and Ziosk is technology, and you know what? At the end of the day, if you can get your check quicker, and you can get your appetizer quicker, but you can still have that waiter in the middle and the center of the meal, and it's really for casual dining chains, which we all know are challenged. But I have to tell you, their growth has been just absolutely extraordinary. People have an impatient approach today. But what we can't be impatient about is really how we lead our great organizations, and you're all leaders or you would not be here today. And we've got 4 great groups here today representing 4 phenomenal companies. You can't be impatient with how you treat either the people inside your company, how you treat yourself, because that's self-respect. If you're not good to yourself, you can't be good to other people, and therefore attract the talent that you will need to grow your brands. So what I'd like to do is ask, we'll start with Rakesh, if you'd be kind enough, tell us who you are, your company, and we'll also, after this, be circulating the bios of everyone so that you hopefully can all interact with follow-up discussions and questions.
Sure.
We'll go down.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you for just extending the invitation and being able to be surrounded by some of the more notable personalities as well as accomplished folks in the restaurant industry. I'm excited to learn and meet many of you. With that, my name is Rakesh Chandiramani. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Vingt Wine Bars, otherwise known as VSV. We are a collection of community-driven French wine bars across New York City. The concept was founded by myself, my business partner Dale Apari, and Sebastian Ove, 3 of us. VSV is really offers an extensive selection of French wines from well-known as well as boutique producers, and most recently offered a private label collection of French wines that we sort of carefully pair with a bistro-style tapas menu, all exclusively in the niche of the French cuisine. Thus far, since 2011, we have grown to 4 units, all organic growth, about to embark on our 5th unit this summer, all in New York, and very excited about just the opportunity and the possibilities of where we see ourselves moving forward, not only within the community of New York, but also other areas within the United States.
Hi everybody, my name is Jeff Lefcourt. I'm from Corner Table Restaurants and The Smith. We have restaurants in New York City and Washington, D.C. now. I grew up in New York. I grew up on the Upper West Side of New York. I loved food and hosting people from a young age. I was bussing tables, waiting tables in New York City, and I just continued to enjoy that. And I just been in the restaurant business pretty much my whole life. I started Corner Table Restaurants in 2001. We've opened up a couple of different brands. Right now we have The Smith, but it's always started from and always been about the people of the restaurants, and our success, we feel, has always been driven by who we have touching the guests every single day. And now it's really focused on how we take care of all of our, now it's almost 1,000 employees, and how we set up an environment where everybody really enjoys coming to work, enjoys taking care of each other, and enjoys taking care of the guests. And now we're building our 6th restaurant in Washington, D.C., and we're looking at other cities, Miami, Chicago, Boston, to open more locations of the Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leslie Ferrier. I'm the head of human resources for Momofuku, which was started in 2004 by our chef, David Chang. We have Ko here in Manhattan, Noodle Bar, Sambar, Mapesh, and Nishi here in New York. We are also in Washington, D.C., Momofuku CCDC. We have a restaurant that we just opened up in Las Vegas, Momofuku Las Vegas. We also have restaurants in Toronto as well as a restaurant in Sydney, Australia, and we are growing and very proud of that. We also have a sister bakery called Milk Bar, which is run by Christina Tosi, and we also have our app, which is Ondo, which may be new to some of you. I've been with Momofuku for almost 2 years and have been in hospitality for over 20 years. I opened up the Lowe's Miami Beach Hotel, the Lowe's House of Blues Hotel, and the Lowe's Portofino Bay Hotel in Universal Studios. So I spent time with Hilton and Lowe's, and also most recently, before Momofuku, at Le Pain Quotidien. Hi.
Hi everyone, Adam Eskin. I'm the founder of Dig In. I also happen to love vegetables. We are a mission-driven restaurant group. We see food as a mechanism by which we can build community and have an impact. In our now 15 restaurants that we own and operate, we serve seasonal American food, like I said, mostly vegetables. And we have chefs and chefs de cuisines and a bunch of wonderful cooks that come to work every day to chop, prep, cook, and serve that food. A big part of what we do in terms of thinking about people extends beyond our restaurants, from a community perspective, going backwards to start into our supply chain. So we've been building a fairly proprietary supply chain over the last 5 or 6 years. The majority of the vegetables that we buy directly, and we think about our farmers as partners as opposed to people that are selling us stuff. Delighted to be here. Thanks, Alice, for the invitation, and thanks to Bloomberg. I think we can all agree people is probably one of the most important things we can and should focus on. I think there's a lot to talk about. Last week, just to put a number on it, we sold over 70,000 pounds of vegetables across our 15 restaurants, which is a lot of vegetables. And that's a lot of manual chopping and cooking and grilling and sauteing by some 600 people. So as we think about growth, we'll probably finish the year with 20 or so between New York and Boston. The conversation that keeps coming up is how do we make people a competitive advantage, and how do we sort of have a differentiated perspective around people. So thanks for having me. Look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. And for purposes of our conversation, both Momofuku and Dig In have private investors, equity outside investors, and I would say that VSV and Corner Table at this point don't, insofar as, so just as we continue our conversation. So, all of you have built incredible icon brands externally. Everybody knows your brands, they love your brands. I mean, Leslie, your company's obviously international. For purposes of kind of kicking this off, how do you think about how you have built an icon culture internally? So forget about the external. We talk social media, external customers. How are you building something iconic for your own colleagues to really culturally make your company unique and have people really want to be part of your space and your magic? Leslie, we'll start with you.
Oh, if I had the answer to that question. It's something that's incredibly hard to do, especially as you're growing, because you have this sort of the ethos that the company started with, and then you want to keep leveraging that as you're growing. And I know within Momofuku, that's been a challenge recently with our exponential growth. But one of the things that we're really focusing on is becoming a true learning environment. And when I say learning, it's not just classes or on-the-job training, but really experiential learning, where we will take our chefs or our culinary talent and we will send them out to even other restaurants or send them to other restaurants in other countries to have an experience and bring that back to Momofuku. We're also leveraging not just the talent, but our learning management system within technology. And I think, we talked about technology earlier, and it's really something that we're focused in on to allow our chefs to cook, but to also have a reliable technology from a learning standpoint that we can scale across the organization. So for example, if one of our chefs has an idea for a new dish, they can load it into the learning management system, take a video of themselves, putting those ingredients together, describing the dish, and then sending that out to the organization as an idea for a dish. So it's really allowing technology to help us leverage who we are and help us from a branding standpoint to really make sure that what's happening in New York or what's happening in Vegas or Washington, D.C., even Toronto or Sydney, is really connected to the rest of the company. Because Sydney's in another world from us right now. We'll have a meeting with updates for the restaurants, and those folks will have to be up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning for a call. So we're really trying to leverage technology, and we're also really trying to be good employers from the standpoint of not just the people that are working for us right now, but the people who actually leave us, so that we have relationships and maintain relationships with those people that leave us, go out, have other experiences, and know that they can come back to us. And that's part of the strength of who we are and our environment.
So really, you're saying you're also investing, it's training, that the company's made a commitment to train, certainly back of the house. And I would ask Jeff, given the size and scope of your restaurants, how do you, really pass that forward for the management on the front of the house, which is equally as important, to Leslie's point, chefs back of the house, which you as well experienced, Leslie. What do you do on the front of the house?
For us, culture is everything. It all starts with culture. I think we spend more time, the senior leadership of the restaurants, talking about what it's like to work in our restaurants than we do anything else. We say our singular purpose as a restaurant group is to make people happy. That's what we hope that a guest will decide to come to the Smith, and hopefully will do something, and then they'll leave a little bit happier than they got there. But we also really focus on the happiness of all of our employees, and I think it starts with that, because if they're not really enjoying coming to work every day and enjoying the work that they do, they won't be able to find that extra bit of effort that it takes to do the right thing for guests, and to put the love into the dishes that they're preparing, and to go above and beyond and exceed all guests' expectations. We've been talking, we have orientations where every single employee comes to an orientation, and we talk about our culture, our beliefs, and our values, and our purpose. And we talk about how it's so common in restaurants, and I think in tons of different industries. You hear it on the subway, in bars, you go hang out with friends. Everybody talks about, I hate my job, I hate my boss. That's what millennials, that's what you hear in restaurants. That's part of the culture. And we're trying to change that. And so we tell people, on day one, we want you to really not be that person in the bar at the end of the shift saying that you hate the restaurant you work in and you hate your boss. We only want people to work with us that really like us, believe in what we believe in, and like what they're doing. And hopefully, and we try to show them how pleasurable it can be to serve 1,000 people brunch. And that's pretty cool and exciting. And when we serve 1,000 brunches, people leave hopefully after work, and they're like, wow, I touched a lot of people's lives, and maybe these people will remember us and remember they had their first date with us, and all those kinds of things. And if we could kind of teach people that working in restaurants is fun, then they'll enjoy it and give that extra effort.
Well, there's an overarching thought too. I mean, how do we, and we won't get too involved in this right now, but unfortunately the hospitality industry, as we all know, it's either sexy, and we'll talk about this a little later about being the place to be, and then you get into the industry and realize how hard it is. But the hospitality industry, which is really one of the largest employers in this country, does not get the credit it's deserving of. So every single step that we all take, regardless if someone stays or not, is still reflective as to the industry, which becomes important. You know, one thing I would say, it came up earlier, there was 2 words that came up, and it started with Mike when he said that people are relevant, and then Justin said authentic, and I would tell you, because we track this at Eliot all the time, people really want to work for people that are genuine. You know, there is a difference of perks versus what is in the underbelly DNA of your company. Anyone can get a perk, but what's the essence of what you believe in? I can tell you at our firm at Eliot, and I say it very respectfully, we know we have a calling to change people's careers. We believe if we change their careers at every level, including through the CEO level, that we change their lives. If we change their lives, we hope that we change businesses and industries. If you don't believe that, we could be friends, you're never going to work at Eliot. Won't happen. Meet you for a drink, send you a note, come to an Eliot event, never going to get to work at Eliot. So I think to your earlier point, and Adam, I'm going to ask you a question because I'm truly, am in a totally different business than yours. As you've grown, how do you maintain the culture that Leslie and Jeff and Rakesh we know will, speak about? How do you do that when you leave the borders of when you can touch people and now you don't know exactly? Technology is one thing, but it's hard culturally to really know, do they believe for exactly everything Dig In stands for?
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that. And so I think, we need probably a few hours to go through all the buckets. So
We only have 28 minutes, please.
Just to pick one thing that's been top of mind for us over the last probably 24 months, I think that's been helpful, is we started to notice a bit of a divide as between the support team or the corporate team that we were building and that culture and the culture in our restaurants, right? Socioeconomically, educational background and otherwise, and we identified that as a problem. So at the highest level, I think, in getting the people side of our business right just takes a lot of work and a lot of capital. So we realize there's a lot of different ways that we need to invest in this area of our business if we're going to scale. And so an example of that is we had a small office on the west side on 27th and 7th. We were getting pretty tight, and we were looking for a new space to grow into. We ended up taking more space than we expected, and we took about a third of the overall space. And we've built a teaching kitchen. So basically everybody that sits in our office sits around and in a kitchen and in and around food. And so, we have tastings there. We have these, imagine if you were going to culinary school and there's stations and butcher blocks and a big monitor above, but we can bring 25 folks in at a time. And we can do curriculum, and we can do coursework. Those same classes that we're putting together, support team members can also join and participate. So you could have, Joe or Mark, from our Nomad location standing across from our senior director of marketing, both learning the same knife skills or saute skills or otherwise. So bridging that gap, in terms of thinking about being authentic, and having, one culture that sort of permeates through the broader organization, where when you're a decentralized, 15, 20, 50, 100 unit business, I don't think you can run 2 businesses. So we've been trying to attack that problem, and that's just one way.
That is one of the biggest issues that growing and emerging brands face. The other thing I'll point out, do not mistake the fact a lot of these larger companies, you see their brand this way, but don't think that they're not trying to do other emerging companies and competitive fast casual concepts and taking the titles totally away. So in other words, not in the parent company. I'll give you an example. Cracker Barrel, because Cracker Barrel was mentioned. Cracker Barrel has a division called Holler and Dash. I don't know how many people here have heard of Holler and Dash. Okay. They are putting an extraordinary amount of systems and money into that division because they recognize to everyone here that that's where the space they want to be in, because that's where was demonstrated earlier by Mike's comments, a lot of people want to go. So these large companies, these are not, stupid people. They're going to come at you every which way that they can, which leads me to ask Rakesh. So minimum wage, we need to talk about that. You're living with it, and Leslie certainly, as chief people officer, it's something, you're dealing with every day. When you think about minimum wage, you think about rising rents. You think about, and I want to be respectful to this because I'm not on your side of the desk, but, I'm not sure that the city government is as cooperative to the restaurant space in New York. Let's be politically correct. I'm not sure that, they're your best friends. How does that impact your thinking about growing both here in New York? Or is it anticipation that it's going to be true of every city? Like, how are you framing it in your mind's eye?
Yeah, I think that when I speak for all of us, none of us, all of us want our staff to make money. We don't want them to leave the door unhappy when they close out or cash out at the end of the day. So as the previous panel has spoken about, we have to be very thoughtful about just the increasing the inflation that we're incurring in this city. It's important. I think New York is just an important icon in a flagship to grow your business, as it puts your name on the map. But the critical aspects of growth will probably be seen once we are able to expand outside of New York. There's macroeconomic factors there's some macroeconomic factors which we can't control. There's rising rents, increase in minimum wage, as we had spoken about. But it causes you to think about what other tactics can I implement to essentially, make sure that I'm meeting my same sort of sales growth targets, as well as have enough operating income to be able to expand. That's what we've been able to do organically, at least over the last 5 or 6 years. So what it's pressured us to do, and it's almost worked out quite well, is looking at smaller real estate is definitely one strategy. And from that perspective, it also limits just the labor configuration that we implement within each particular unit. So we can operate, for example, a 400 square foot space and a 700 square foot space pretty much with the same staff level, which has actually been unique for us. So we're getting to a point where we're almost able to make labor almost a fixed cost. And that is really by focusing on smaller sort of micro units. But operationally, you're going to need at least a larger unit to be able to spread that scale across. So how we've modeled ourselves in New York is that we have one flagship unit, and then we have these sort of smaller units that surround it, and we're able to at least spread some costs throughout. But it's a tough thing to manage. And going to Jeff's point is that you also have to make sure that your culture is aligned along the way as well. So
Jeff, how do you communicate? I mean, given the complexity of menu and everything else, how do you think about that and communicate both front of house, back of the house, corporate? What's the strategy as you grow to both maintain culture, but also to Rakesh's point, right? Minimum wage is going up. No one's to judge value. I mean, you can speak as specific financially as as you'd like, but
how do we communicate anything? I mean, we communicate a lot with a lot more attention to the details now. And when we do something, it has to be much more precise. So when we do menu changes, we really want to involve as many people as possible in a menu change. So we're working with chefs from all of the locations and get them involved with the process, and take our time to make sure that the training is done right. So that it used to be I'd walk in and we'd want to change something on the fly. Can't do that anymore. Now it takes a lot more training and communication to make sure we're doing it right.
And isn't it a truism, Leslie, that you have to hire the right people? I mean, it's easy to just hire people. So how do you know the people you're hiring? Because here's the other thing. The talent that's called upon today is so different at every level. There was a time you just did the job. Today, because of all the price challenges and everything else, people are almost cross-trained. They have to understand money. They have to understand how to mathematics. They have to know customer service. They should have a general knowledge of business. It's way beyond their core discipline. What metrics do you use, if any, to actually make sure that when you hire people, it's the right people?
I think it's the cultural fit. And one of the challenges in human resources, at least from my perspective, is that we'll sit in a room and there'll be leadership in the room and everybody says people, people, people. But when you get down to the process of people and what that means as sort of the interviewing and the vetting process to get somebody in, there's this, I want a body versus I want the right cultural fit. And there's an impatience for waiting for it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges, and it's really going through a vetting process with people to see them in a variety of different scenarios. There's the one-on-one interview, there's seeing somebody over dinner, there's having somebody come in and do a stage or a trail, and cooking, and in a variety of different groups within the organization at every level. Because somebody coming in who's interviewing with Dave is going to be different than maybe how they're behaving with the restaurant manager. So it's really coming in and getting a feel for that individual and seeing if there's this connection. Momofuku is a highly unusual culture, and it isn't for everybody. And you have to really understand that this person may look great on paper and they may have everything that you want, but it just isn't a love connection. And it's just one of those things.
So do you
that's
think
really
it's more
hard to say
pressure
no.
having a quote unquote celebrity leader, or so there's an advantage to it, recruiting, but there's also a challenge to it?
There's an incredible challenge to it,
Yeah.
but we also take the good with the bad. So I do like to leverage Dave, and Dave is willing. So, we'll bring talent in, and it's great to be able to say that, and this is very true, is that Dave is very involved with our culinary talent, and he is there. I send everybody through a Momofuku one-on-one where they are in a room with Dave, and he's talking to them about the ethos and the genesis of Momofuku and where his head is at, which is really an incredible opportunity. We have Dave develop our sous chefs and spend time with our sous chefs. But some people, the Momofuku environment isn't something that they're going to excel at. So we have to say no to those people or suffer the consequences down the line. And that's just the reality. If they look great on paper, you still have to say no.
Right. And that takes a certain amount of confidence, Adam.
Very different. Would love to meet Dave, but thank you. But in a different kind of way, our culture in the restaurants, and more broadly speaking, is also an acquired taste, and not the easiest company within which to be successful. And so we've been spending a bunch of time recently, and probably will for a number of years now, on the data and analytics of sort of people at scale, and what makes people tick, and how to have a really robust sort of analytical, process-driven approach to recruiting, so that we're not guessing, and it's not necessarily just about, I like this person, or they make me feel good, or I think they're a good fit, but what about this person and their attributes will lead to, on the margin, sort of a higher probability of success when they join our company.
No, and we see this all the time. I can tell you there was, again, we all have experienced this. I'm sure you've all experienced this. There was a time, hey, great person, fits the culture. They seem to really want to work hard. And now, I got to tell you, even in our search practice, we have 50-page books of analytics that track someone's accomplishments, their critical thinking skills. And also you have to be very, very careful from a non-discriminatory stance, by the way. Anyone here do testing when they hire people? I can tell you most companies, once they get to 25, 30 units, some before, they actually do testing. They do out of their own organization testing to ascertain that the individual not only can get the job done today, but they have the bandwidth for tomorrow. Because it was mentioned earlier, which is so true, the cost of turnover is so high. So let me ask you this, Adam, and I'd be curious from everyone, as you've grown, at what point did you realize that you needed to bring in some external talent? I know it was commented earlier, look, I know what works for 15, 20 units may not work when I have 200 units. Mm-hmm. When did you realize that you needed a breadth at any level, whether it was marketing, operationally, that you needed to bring in some other people, being very respectful to existing team?
Sure. Unfortunately, more often than not, always too late, and once things started to break. So when we moved from New York to Boston, it was incredibly successful, but really, really taxing on the organization. And so that was just one moment in time where we looked around, looked at ourselves, looked in the mirror, and just said, if we're going to do this, we don't have the resources to do this the right way. So we need to take a step back, be grateful of all the work that everybody's done on the team to date, and recalibrate and think through what does 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 50 look like. So we've certainly been making a number of moves. Alice has facilitated a number of those, so thank you. And it's been incredibly fruitful and eye-opening, and one of the many lessons learned for me is you just don't know what you don't know. And maybe you can be a little cavalier about it, and you're not quite sure that it's necessary, and then once it gets there, 6 months later, you're like, boy, wish I had done this sooner.
It takes an enlightened leader to be willing to look in the mirror. Not always easy, especially for a founder. The traits of a founder very rarely is willing to be very enlightened. We don't have a ton of time. I want to get to immigration because it hasn't been spoken about today. It's a very important topic. And regardless of political views, we know it impacts this industry in a very, very, really impacts the soul of the industry. So my question, and I would throw this out to anyone of our guests today, number one, how are you communicating internally on that topic? I'm sure that, what's happening? I mean, just to be really candid, what's going on inside? What do you think? Curious what experiences you've all had. And, what do you see insofar as both growth, but also managing emotions? I mean, we are in a very, you can't be in the hospitality industry anyway and not be creative and emotional, independent of intellect. I mean, it just wouldn't scale that way. So first of all, anybody want to talk about what's going on in their own company? Anyone want to share behind closed doors? Come on. Any ideas? Minimum wage, immigration?
And for us, it was a huge awakening on November 8th or whatever, 9th. And, it really freaked out a huge portion of our group. And everybody, it kind of felt a divide and a loss of trust from we have a lot of immigrant employees. And it was really important that we listened to those concerns and the fears that everybody was having. And we really tried to do whatever we could to respond and show support however we could. And I think over the last few months, it's been rebuilding the trust that we care about each other, we care about everybody that works with us, and we want to do whatever we can to help whoever needs help. And I think what we've done is tried to get information for people, connecting, if anybody has questions, connecting them with some lawyers or anything that we can do to kind of ease concerns about what's going on. I think that this could be the biggest impact in the restaurant industry in New York, for sure. I assume the whole country. But I don't know the statistics, but it's a big concern of ours, and I think it should be of anybody in the restaurant business to make sure that whatever happens, that we take care of everybody that's contributing so much to the great things that we're all doing.
So let me ask you a question, and Rakesh, I'll throw it to you. But, look, in life, when you believe in something, you have to be an activist. There's certain topics in life you just can't pass on if you really believe in whatever it may be. Maybe it's this topic, something else. So I would just globally make that point, that if, because you just said something pretty serious. It could be one of the most important challenges and issues in this industry. So, it's a call to action for those that feel it's important.
And even I'm just piggybacking off what Jeff said, it's important because if you think about the future of the industry and if there's a hesitation for folks to, either continue working in it, to have the ambition to grow in it, and they understand, the reality of their background, it also inhibits your growth as well, given the fact that the labor force may not be as available as they once were. So, that goes back to kind of the question that you asked, just on some of the restrictions or some of the things that we're dealing with as we're considering growth.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's to be seen. I want to switch gears for a second. So Burger King came up this morning, and I've been down to Burger King corporate many a time. I know many of those guys. Very, very impressive, by the way. I don't think anyone in the corporate staff is older than 35. I mean, they are really, really, really bright, and I have incredible respect for what they've accomplished. Their methodology, and by the way, we, and again, it's not purposes of today, but we at Eliot do things beyond restaurants. So we have a whole lifestyle practice and consumer and things like that. But their whole notion is that they can bring talent on board that is not from the industry. They can get the talent in the locations, in their units, but they don't necessarily need the talent coming from the restaurant space. They just really want to hire very bright, smart individuals that can think critically, and they are people of action and creative. Do you have a viewpoint on that? And how important do you think it is just being in it every day as you grow your companies? Because remember, different scale of size. How important do you think that is?
We think it's very important, as you know. That our sort of perspective on that is fairly consistent with what you just shared about Burger King, but we do think it has to be a balance. There's a number of aspects about what we do as restaurant operators, chefs, culinarians, that does not require reinvention. But there is, talking about Leslie's business, for example, there's a pretty steep learning curve, and you just need to see a lot of stuff before you know all the stuff, right, that can happen. So For some areas of the business, we very much take that sort of 3G Burger King strategy, and in other areas we are looking for more institutional sort of veteran talent, that can sort of guide us along and show us the way.
I think if you get that balance, if you get somebody who's coming in who's really looking at it with a fresh set of eyes, and you can get people who have sort of the knowledge and the experience, and you can combine those two different types of folks, and that's really your strength, because you've got the fresh set of eyes, plus you've got the experience and the stuff that you don't have to keep figuring out. I know within Momofuku, when I started there, everybody was sort of figuring it out and had been hired for energy and cultural fit and that sort of thing, but there was not a lot of experience. So you talked about making that decision to come in and get them more, to understand that you needed different kinds of talent and more experience coming to the table. I know that at Momofuku that was recognized probably a couple years ago, and that was really some of my direction when I came in, was balance this out, because we need some experience so that we can go to the next level. And one of the mandates at Momofuku is what got you here won't get you there. So we got to a certain point and we really, really recognized, and Dave specifically recognized, that we needed some different talent to come on board to take it to the next level.
We haven't had tons of success with hiring people with great experience, whether it's a general manager for a restaurant or an experienced chef. We've found that it's way better for us to grow people from within and to try to hire people that believe in the same things we believe in. And we have no choice but to empower, and we want to empower everybody that works with us to be thinkers and take action, because so many of the people, I'm not talking to every 1.5 million guests that come into the restaurants, so we have no choice but to trust people to do the right thing and do whatever it takes to make sure that the guest leaves happier than when they got there, and with a real desire to come back. And they have to.
Given how many employees you have, you must have a very specific vetting process of employees in the beginning. If that is the methodology that they grow and evolve at any level, you must have a very specific lens of certain qualities that you look for, both technically and non-technically, the social stuff, that allows you to have the confidence that they can then morph. And then you're probably spending, what would you say is, how much do you put to training? Because you can't expect they'll morph and grow if you don't train. How much do you put to training? Pretty much on the.
A lot of attention. How much dollars? I don't know that number.
Hey, Alice, I just want to ask a question, because we heard earlier on the panel how Justin talked about how important it is to have the right people. And when I talk to clients, I hear labor, finding people and keeping them is so hard, and it's very competitive. Just the hardest position to fill is a dishwasher. If you hire the guy and he actually shows up, you're happy. So, without breaking plates. So how are you sourcing people? You're all growing your brands. Every restaurateur is growing. That's a lot of people, right? And then way you're describing it, to get over the bar, to get hired, sounds hard. Yeah. So how are you sourcing and finding?
We have a program, it's called Bring a Friend to Work. So we encourage people and give people bonuses. If they go find another server or a cook, it's like $500. And if they find a manager, a chef, a friend it's like $2,500. So and that's the best way to get people, because then we're surrounding ourselves with people that they want.
And how long do they have to stay to get that money?
6 months, 3 months,
okay,
something like that. I mean, they have to, can't be.
And here's what
like
technology
Alice's
is important. If I have a great experience and I work at any of your companies and I have my iPhone and I love it, to your point, recommendation and referral, great. But if I don't, not great, because then everybody else knows that you haven't treated me well. Right? So with technology, the great thing about technology is it's a communicator, but if you don't treat people well in one full swoop, you have no idea what people can say.
But
just
it's
about
also,
working at a place.
Just thinking, like, in today's world, you talk about Burger King. Most of the millennials, if they're going to go, they're going to want to work to some place that they think is cool and can identify, and they can Instagram to their friends that this is where I'm working, right? So I'm just thinking about it. I hear how hard it is for restaurateurs to find people, and I'm just curious if you have. The bonus program is nice. Are there any other strategies or magic bullet you guys have?
One of the things that we really beta tested at Momofuku is we had a huge overtime problem, huge overtime problem because people were being worked constantly because we couldn't find people. And our issue wasn't dishwashers, it was line cooks. And I think a lot of places have that issue. So we really focused in on one restaurant, and we built in the requirements to be a CDC or an executive sous chef, a line cook, a prep cook, you know, the garde-manger, and then, you know, a dishwasher. And what we started to do is really focus in on the training and the development within each position, so that if we had a sous chef position, we would promote from the line cooks, from the prep cooks would go the line cooks, and from the dishwashers would go to the prep, and then we were looking for dishwashers. And it wasn't as difficult to find a dishwasher. And the other thing that I love about Momofuku and sort of how we approach is we'll go to the prestigious culinary schools to get talent. We will look there. We'll go to, you know, everywhere across the nation to get talent. But one of the things that Dave is most proud of and that we're really active in is taking that person off the street who has the passion, who wants to learn, who can come in and we can say, listen, yeah, you can be a dishwasher at Momofuku. You're going to have access to some amazing chefs, and they're going to teach you how to be prep, and we're going to put you on the schedule some days to be prep to grow you into that role. Now they're on a trajectory of growth. So it's not just a dishwasher. And that strategy has helped us to improve exponentially in our restaurants from that standpoint. And the other component of it that we've recognized is that just because somebody can cook and is an extraordinary chef doesn't mean that they're a fantastic leader. So we've really tried to help support our culinary talent from that standpoint and really build teams and culinary leadership that can help train and grow sort of the esprit de corps within each restaurant, because each restaurant of ours is different. Everything is a unique in its own world.
Small things that have worked for us. You know, we're, as I mentioned, a community-driven concept, and within sort of the culture that we have within our organization, it's also recognizing the additional skills and talents that our staff has. And there's very talented people that that work at several of our restaurants, and so we leverage those skills. They may be a photographer, they may be a graphic designer, but it's identifying that purpose and that contribution to be able to ensure that is recognized and perhaps even leveraged as you're looking to build on your brand and looking to build on your vision. They're small tactics, but they make a huge difference because, as I mentioned, they feel that they're contributing. So there's an aspect of the brand that just resonates that they want to hang on to.
I'm just going to add, I think it just goes back to our culture that if we're known to be a great place to work, then people will want to come work with us. So we go into a new city, and it's tougher when we go into DC because people don't know us as well. But here we hired 250 people to open a restaurant a year ago, and it wasn't that difficult because people are excited to be part of a place that they feel good.
No, I think that's very important. It's kind of how I would, as you're speaking, I want to leave you with this thought. So we study leadership at Eliot, and, and it's changed over time, by the way, but what really makes a great leader? Someone who's decisive. They know how to make a decision. Whether you make the right decision or not isn't as important. It's the fact that you can make a decision, because let's remember, people are aligned and they're following your great companies and all of our firms because they know that one person is going to ultimately make that decision. The other thing is that they're curious. They want to be better. No one wants to work for anybody that isn't curious and that isn't willing to maybe learn something new. And the last thing I would tell you is that they're also willing to collaborate. And it can't always be about them. And if you have those three things at this one moment in time, because you spoke about millennials, my own group, because I've got, what do they tell me, Gen Zs or something? That's the next one coming up. That's what they want. They are smart, they're educated, they're very curious, and they have choices. And you hope that they all choose to go to your great firm. So thank you very much for having us, and thank you to Bloomberg, and thank you, Gary, for inviting us. Thanks, guys.